Hello students, today we will discuss lesson number 8, South India and the Cholas. So the Cholas dynasty was one of the longest ruling dynasty in the world, and here in India this was the strongest dynasty in South India. So just have a look. The Cholas, so in the beginning they were not very powerful. They started to gain their power in the year of 850 AD, and the founder of this dynasty, Vijayalaya, was and he was just a subordinate commander of the Palwas. Then later on, his son and successor Aditya I, he inflicted a crushing defeat on the Pandyas. So he just gave a harmful defeat to Pandyas, and now their dynasty was started. Now means they gained the power, and it was the beginning of properly beginning of their dynasty. So according to our revised syllabus, in this chapter we will do these two topics only. First is sources to reconstruct the age. So under this we will do Brihadeshwara temple and inscriptions only. Then under the administration of Cholas we will do the administration of two rulers. First is Raja Raja one and another one is Rajendra one. But in our chapter, in our book, we are having consolidated topic of administration of Cholas only, not of a particular ruler. And this topic, political history of the imperial Cholas, is not there in our revised syllabus. So let us start with the sources to reconstruct the age of imperial Cholas. So as we are doing in all, two type of sources are there. One is the literary sources and another one is the archaeological sources. So let us start with the archaeological sources. Brihadeshwara temple. So one elaborate topic of same is there on page number 86. A little bit we will do from that page also. The Cholas built majestic palaces and grand temples, and one of the masterpieces of Chola architecture is the Brihadeshwara temple, also known as Raja Rajeshwara temple, and place is Tanjore. And the temple was built about 1000 AD by Raja Raja, the great of the Chola dynasty. So Raja Raja is known as the greatest ruler of this dynasty, and it was dedicated to Lord Shiva. The temple provides the best example of a Dravidian style of architecture in vastness, design, sculptures, and allied arts. So these are the best example of Dravidian style. And some of its prominent features are: number one, the massive tower rising to a height of some 180 feet, and the tower being crowned by a massive dome, means at the top of this massive dome is there, which is a single block of stone weighing about 80 ton, and the Garbhagriha housing the colossal Shiva Lingam nearly 9 meters high. It means very large structure is this, and the outer doorway being flanked by two gigantic dwarpals, means on the outer door both side two very, means extremely large dwarpals are situated there, and the inner walls containing fine and bold sculpture of various deities, means number of deities are depicted there, their sculptures are there, and a few more features are presented in detail under Chola temple, as I already told you. So let us move to page number 86. So here same topic is given here, the Brihadeshwara temple. So let us start from here the characteristics of this temple. Number one, the temple consists of the Nandi Mandapa, a pillared portico, and an assembly hall, all interconnected. So, as very big structure this temple is having, and number of rows of columns are there. Nandi Mandapa is there, assembly hall is there, and all are interconnected with each other. It means one can move from one place to another. And the Mahamandapa was originally three-storied, means in the beginning it was a three-storied building, and the top story was open terrace with a row of Nandis placed on the top of its walls. Third, like the outer doorway, other outer entrances are also flanked by dwarpals. It means similarly, at the entrance means all the entrances having on the both sides of those entrances dwarpals, and numerous Sanskrit and Tamil inscriptions on it are fine calligraphy, means very beautifully written wordings in the Sanskrit and Tamil is there. And another imposing structure in the temple is the Aman temple housing Brihanyaki, the consort of Brihadeshwara. Okay, so from here question could be there. Write down the main characteristics of Brihadeshwara temple. Then let us move back to the sources to reconstruct this. Now come to its second point, that is inscriptions. Then hundreds of inscriptions both in Tamil and Sanskrit have been discovered in various parts of the Chola kingdom. So from here what we can say that the language, it was Tamil as well as Sanskrit. So these two languages were there in use, and being engraved on stone or metal, whether walls were there, pillars there, or copper plates there, they could not be tampered with, and therefore as pieces of historical evidence they are more trustworthy than other written works. So under the literary sources, these inscriptions which are written in Tamil and Sanskrit languages and uh, on the walls, pillars and copper plates, and these are very reliable source of this particular Chola history. And source material of history and their significance is as follow. Number one, some of the inscriptions supply dates and refer to the conquest of the kings and the extent of their kingdom. As in these inscriptions, even dates are mentioned, then when that particular conquest was there, or by which ruler. I means detailed information we can get from these inscriptions. Then the Brihadeshwara temple inscription gave measurements of lands that are gifted to temple. It means in detail everything is mentioned, that how much land portion was gifted by the rulers to this Brihadeshwara temple. Then some of them described the various ornaments worn by deities, and with details of weight of gold and gems and the manner of their sitting. A few copper plate inscriptions are preserved in the Museum of Leiden in Netherlands. So even few copper plate inscriptions are preserved in the museum, and they record gift of lands to temple by Chola king Parantaka in 10th century AD. These endowments came to be called by name Landen Grant. So from here we can say these inscriptions is giving us information related to how much land was gifted, how much type or what we can say the ornament was worn by the deities, and detail of weight of gold and gems that are provided to these temples by the rulers are there. And from here we can get each and every detail related to the temple, related to their deities. Then the inscriptions refer to the deities whom the temple are dedicated. Then in this way, they throw important light on the kingdom's religious and cultural history, and the 12th century temple inscriptions reflect cooperative relationship among different religious groups or people. Also, we can get the information that different religions were there, and they were having very cooperative relations among them. Then inscriptions tell us about the Chola administration also, and the means here what kind of administration was there, it is also depicted in these inscriptions. And the Uttra mirror inscriptions, for example, it contains detail about the village administration under the Cholas, and it tells that the kingdom's chief source of income was land revenue. Even we can get now what was the chief source of income, that was land revenue, and based on careful survey and classification of all types of land. It means land revenue was based on the type of land, means proper and careful survey was going on during that time, and after that revenue was fixed. Even means about the religion, about the literature, about the temple administration, each and every type of information, even with dates, we can get from these inscriptions. So under the sources to reconstruct this page, we have done Brihadeshwara temple under archaeological sources and inscriptions under literary sources. From here we can get near about each and every information related to Cholas. And now our next topic, that is the administration. As political history is not there, so we are not going to do individually Raja once and the Rajendra once empire, and wherever they got success, or what type of what we can say warfare they have adopted. As we are having administration only, so if in your paper question is there, give a detailed account about the administration of Raja 1, or detailed account the administration of Rajendra 1, then your answer will be same, as this is the administration of Cholas, and Rajendra 1 and Raja 1, same type of administration was there. So let us start with the administration of Cholas. So the Chola administration combined, says Nilkanta Shastri, means according to him, vigorous central control with a very large mayors of local kingship, followed by other rulers of South India. A little bit confusion is there, so I'm again reading. Vigorous central control with very large measures of local autonomy. It means very healthy central control was there, like the modern time we are having unitary type of system, then further powers are divided. Same was there, that central control was there, but local autonomy was also given to them, is a local administration also there, and they were having their individual powers over that local areas. But when we are talking about the entire system, Then the central was very controlled, means the ruler was the powerful one, and he was having the control over all the empire. Okay, then it provided a pattern for kingship followed by other rulers of South India. So let us start with the central administration. The monarch, his ministers, and other officials. So, under the central administration, the king was the pivot around which the whole system was based. Means he was in the center, around him all the system was working, and the coronation ceremony was marked by many festivals. So, when any particular ruler was crowned, then that ceremony was celebrated with many festivals, and the huge resources of the kingdom, vast palace establishment, and splendor of the court, they all enhance the power and glory of the monarch. So from here we can judge how much um, that administration was, how much vast, and how effectively ruling that particular empire. And the king had a group of ministers, and those particular ministers representing a particular department, as in modern time we are having. Then to advise him on administrative affairs. So all these administrators or ministers, they were appointed to advise the ruler. An administrative system operated by a large number of officials, and some of them holding a higher rank and other belonging to lower rank. It means ranking was there, and many of the offices had become hereditary, like a father, if he is having some kind of office under him, so after him his son will be the next person to rule that office or to run that office, and they passed on as a right from father to son, same means hereditary. Then provinces and other territorial divisions. Then kingdom was divided into a number of provinces that are called mandalams. So from here question could be there, what the provinces under Cholas known as, so they are called mandalams, and each placed under the charge of a viceroy. So each mandalam was under the control of viceroy, and these viceroys were usually a prince of the royal family or one belonging to landed nobility. And besides, there were the territories of those rulers who paid tributes, means those who were giving them kind of goods, money to Chola king in return of protection. So they were providing, means Cholas were providing them protection from the attacks or other calamities, and in return those particular rulers were giving them type of gifts. And the provinces were further subdivided. So these provinces were further divided into divisions, and the other unit of administration was districts, and the group of villages and the village. Group of villages means kuramas, and the particular village grama. All these territorial divisions had their respective assemblies comprised of notable persons and those representing economic and vocational groupings. It means systematically everything was going on. Entire kingdom ruled by the king. Then further that kingdom was divided into number of provinces, and those provinces were ruled by the viceroys that were princes mainly. Then further those provinces were subdivided into another divisions. Then districts were there, then group of villages were there, then villages, particular villages or individual villages were there, and each and everything was governed very well. And all these territorial divisions had their respective assemblies also comprised of notable persons and those representing economic and vocational groupings. And such an assembly of a whole mandalam was consulted, for instance, in connection with the exemption of land revenue because of several drafts in the provinces. So, whenever one particular decision was there to be taken, then discussion was done with the assemblies of a whole mandalam. So, what mandalams were there? I told you the number of provinces were there that were called mandalams. So if any type of very important matter was there, that was discussed in all mandalams. Here example is given there that related to land revenue, because several drafts were going on during that period of time, so they discuss revenue related matters with all the mandalams. So then next one is the village administration. The most remarkable feature of Chola administration was the exceptional efficiency of the village institutions, and these assemblies enjoyed full power in the management of local affairs. Means that particular local affairs were under the control of these local persons only, means the village and the village headmen only. And the method of election was as follows. So here this is very important, sometime method of election could be there in your paper. So what was the method to elect? So this was name slips. So the method was name slips. So the name slips of all candidates were thrown and mixed up in a pot, and from which they were drawn one by one by a small boy, and the results were announced by the village priest. It means those who were the candidates, their names were written on some kind of slips, and those slips were mixed in a pot, and from that pot one small boy, he used to pick up the slips one by one, and the required slips, he, that means that boy, that by that boy those slips were picked, and that names were announced as the result of that election, and that announcement was given by the village priest. Now the functions and responsibilities. So the village assemblies that were elected by slip system, so these assemblies administered justice within the village except the cases involving serious crimes. So if question is there, what type of functioning was done by the village assemblies? So village assembly provide justice within the village, but only serious crimes were not um, discussed in these assemblies, or some kind, if serious crime was done by someone, so for that particular purpose justice was not provided in these assemblies. And other thing, they regulated water supply, gathered taxes, and administered all charitable institutions such as temple, school, etc. So similarly, as modern time things are going on, same type of administration was there, and that they could sell or donate land for religious purposes, and accounts were maintained with the meticulous care, means with extreme care the village accounts were maintained. And if someone embezzled money, if someone stole money, he was severely dealt with, means very harsh type of punishments provision was there for that kind of crime. And the village assembly carried on its affair with the help of smaller community, each looking after specific matters. It means smaller committee was also appointed, and a particular business was given to them, like tanks, gardens, temple, justice, and general management. It means very systematically village administration was going on there. Then sources of revenue also given here. So under the sources, as land revenue was the main source, so land revenue was fixed at 1/6 of the gross produce. So what percent of land revenue was fixed? 1/6. And the other important source of income were the taxes on trade, mines, handlooms, water courses, and of course the customs, that is duties on imported goods, in the things that they used to import from other countries. And the main item of expenditure was the maintenance of royal family. It means these all are the sources of income, and this income was used mainly on the maintenance of royal family, maintenance of armed forces, construction of towns, temples, and works of public utilities such as roads, tanks, and irrigation system. It means systematically that money was used. Next is the army and navy. Chola ruler maintained a large, well-trained army and an effective naval force. It means they are having army as well as a naval force, navy also there. And the army consisted of archers. It means the person with bows and arrows, foot soldiers, horsemen, and war elephant. And the soldiers lived in cantonments like in modern time we are having, and that cantonments called kandagams, and situated in different parts of the empire. So up to this our topic is over. So under the Chola temple and their art is same that we have already done. Particular topic is not there in our syllabus, only Brihadeshwara temple main topic is there that we have already done. So with this our chapter is over. Just watch this video, go through these topics. If any confusion is there, you can message me. Otherwise chapter is very easy, nothing difficult is there. So just try to understand, and next time we will come with another video. Thank you.